Tonight, you drift into a memory so delicate, it almost refuses to be told. A memory bound not by swords or marble, but by the fragile petal of a single rose. This is not the story of empires rising, nor of armies marching. This is the story of silence, of paper, of ink that hesitates, and of a page that could not exist without the presence of a flower. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. You are not in your room anymore. You are inside another century. You wake in a chamber dim with dawn, where the air is sweet but faintly heavy, as if perfumed by something that bloomed yesterday and is only now fading. You do not know where you are at first. The ceiling curves high above you, plaster painted with faded stars, their gold leaf trembling as a thin line of morning light sneaks through the carved yoli screen. The stone beneath you is cool, cold enough to remind you that you are alive. You rise, and when you do, you hear the faint crumble of parchment beneath your hand. You are in a scriptorium, a hall of writing within the Mule Palace. Long wooden desks stretch across the room, each one laid with paper thick as silk, ink pots sealed with wax, and reed pens sharpened to trembling points. Servants have been here before you, polishing the floors, ranging the manuscripts, leaving behind the faint trace of rosewater on the air. But they are gone now. The room belongs to silence, and to you. Your eyes drift to the window. Outside, the garden stirs awake. You see it only in fragments. Green leaves trembling through the lattice, a single shaft of gold light striking the edge of a fountain. But you can hear it. The water trickles like a hymn. A coal sings somewhere in the distance. And closer still, you hear the faintest rustle. A servant laying roses on the steps, fresh cut. Dew still wet on their skin dot, and then you remember. You are here not as a visitor, not as a dreamer, but as a writer. The emperor has asked for a book to be written in Persian script, so fluid that each line will appear as though the page itself were breathing. It is not your book, not your words, and yet it is your hand that must shape them. You lift the reed pen, you dip it into ink, but when you press the tip to the paper, nothing comes. Your heart beats heavier. You try again. The ink scratches the surface, leaves behind a mark, but it is lifeless, dry, brittle as dust. The letters resist you. They falter, they stumble, and suddenly you feel the weight of all the books round you. The crayons, the epics, the treatises, the poems copied by hands steadier than yours. You feel their eyes upon you. You feel their judgment. You whisper to yourself, "What if I am not meant to write this?" And then, faint as breath, a memory stirs. You recall the words of an elder scribe. Long ago, a page cannot be written unless a rose watches over it. You had laughed at the superstition once. How could a flower matter to words? But now, in this silence, your hand trembling, you realize it might be true. You cannot write, not yet. Not without a dot you rise from the desk. Your footsteps echo against the stone. The garden calls to you. You move through an arched doorway into light. And there, just beyond the shade of the veranda, you see them, roses, dozens of them, crimson, white, saffron, blooming in silence as though they too are scribes, waiting for someone to turn their fragrance into lines. A gardener kneels among them, his turban loose, his hands wet with dew. He looks up at you briefly, but does not speak. He knows why you are here. He has seen scribes before, crossing this path at dawn, their faces lined with doubt, their fingers stained with ink. He plucks a single rose, deep red, velvet petals trembling, and places it in your hand. The scent overwhelms you. Sweet, heavy, alive. Not the perfume of bottles, not the faint echo of dried petals in bowls, but the raw breath of the earth itself, rising from a flower that has just been touched by morning. You hold it close, and in that moment, The silence of the garden changes. It is no longer heavy. It is awake. You return to your desk. You place the rose beside your paper. Its presence is enough. When you dip your pen this time, the ink flows as if freed from captivity. The letters come alive. They curve. They breathe. They dance across the page like slender vines reaching toward the sun. You write the opening line, and it feels less like your hand moving and more like the rose itself guiding you, whispering through your wrist, through your breath. You pause. You look at the words. They shimmer faintly, as if they too are alive. The thought chills you. What if it is not me writing? What if it is the rose? Hours pass. The room warms. Outside, the garden fills with voices, footsteps, the clatter of trays. But you remain here, in this cocoon of paper and fragrance, writing a page that feels like it has always existed, waiting for you to uncover it. And as you write, you sense something larger. The emperor's face, far away yet near. The scholars who will one day read this page, tracing the letters with trembling fingers. The generations who will never know your name, but will know these words. You sense them all, and still you write. But then, your hand slows. The pen halts. A single drop of ink trembles at its tip, refusing to fall. You look to the rose. Its petals are opening wider now, as though it too is writing, as though it too is speaking. And then you hear it, faint, fragile, almost lost. This page will echo through time. Your chest tightens. You whisper back, I will remember. The rose does not answer. It does not need to. Its silence is enough. Its presence is enough. And now you know, no page in this empire, no word worth keeping, can be written without a rose nearby. Sleep now. Sleep with the ink still wet, with the fragrance still heavy in the air. Tomorrow they will call your name again, and tomorrow the rose will open further. But tonight, you are not just a writer. You are the page itself. Before your eyes open fully, something burns your nose. It is not smoke, not fire, not the harsh sting of lamp oil, but something stranger, a sweetness turned sharp. You inhale too deeply, and the sweetness cuts your throat, leaving you unsettled, as though the morning itself is testing you. You shift against the cotton rug beneath you, your shoulder aching, your body reminding you that even in this world of books and gardens, you are made of weight, of soreness, of bone. The rose is still there beside you. Its petals have opened further in the night, edges curling with warmth, dew drying into a faint shimmer. But its fragrance has changed. No longer gentle, no longer soft. It is heavy now, almost rotting, a perfumed rich, as if the flower itself is reminding you, beauty is fragile, beauty is fleeting, beauty suffocates if held too long. You sit up. Your head throbs faintly. Outside the lattice, the city is already awake. Voices echo from courtyards, clatter from kitchens, the iron of a smith's hammer. Somewhere closer, a servant coughs, wet and rough, a sound that does not belong in the halls of kings yet lives here all the same. You feel it, the sharp edge beneath the silk, the discomfort beneath the calm. This world is not made only of fragrance. It is made of dust, sweat, sickness, and you cannot escape it. No matter how delicate the rose beside you appears, you rise slowly. Your legs ache as if you had walked miles, though you have only crossed dreams. You touch the parchment on your desk, the page you had written last night. The ink is dry now, but the words seem less alive than you remember. You wonder, was it the rose that made them breathe, or was it you? You whisper the first line aloud, but the sound falls flat, lifeless, as though the air itself refuses to carry your voice. A tremor of doubt creeps into your chest. What if the page has lost its soul already? What if the emperor finds only emptiness in these words? Your stomach growls. You realize you have not eaten. You think of the kitchens, steaming pots of lentils, flat breads puffing on iron plates, sweet milk cooling in clay bowls. But you also know the truth. Food here is not equal. The emperor eats feasts. Nobles dine in gold. Scholars sip sherbet poured by trembling hands. And men like you, scribes, writers, dreamers, are given little more than what keeps the body moving. You think of stale bread, of water drawn from a clay pot and already warm by noon. Hunger will be your companion, as much as ink, as much as silence. You pick up the rose again. Its stem pricks your finger. A bead of blood rises, dark against your skin. You stare at it, unsettled. The rose drinks from earth, from water, from the labor of gardeners who bend their backs at dawn. And now it drinks from you. You wipe the blood away quickly, but the sting lingers. You cannot ignore it. Beauty and pain, fragrance and rot, they live side by side. The air grows heavier. You hear footsteps in the corridor, the shuffle of sandals, the murmur of voices. The other scribes are arriving. Their robes brush the stone. Their ink-stained fingers carry the same weight as yours. Some are young, eyes bright, eager to prove themselves. Others are old, their faces folded by time, their hands trembling yet precise. You glance at them, and they glance at you, not unkindly, not cruelly, but with the quiet recognition of men who share the same burden. They to place roses on their desks, some fresh, some dried, some nothing but petals crushed between pages. You realize then, it is not only your superstition, it is theirs as well. A page cannot live without the presence of a rose, not because the flower writes, but because the flower reminds of fragility, of beauty, of the inevitability of decay. The whole grows quiet. Only the scratch of pens remains. 1,000 tiny sounds of reed against parchment, rising and falling like waves. You dip your pen again. You try to write. The first stroke is clumsy, too heavy, ink blotting like a wound. You grit your teeth. You breathe shallow. The rose watches you. Its scent hovers round you, but still your hand falters. A thought pierces your mind. What if they notice I do not belong here? The doubt burns hotter than hunger, sharper than the rose's thorn. You are surrounded by men born into this craft, men who grew up reciting Persian verse before they could even count. And you are a stranger, a wanderer, a borrowed soul. If they look too closely, they will know. You force yourself to continue. One letter, then another. The words stumble, but they do not stop. You write until your wrist aches, until your eyes blur. Sweat drips from your temple onto the page. You wipe it quickly, praying it leaves no stain. The air is thick now, the room heavy with the mingled scents of ink, and wilting roses. You want to breathe deeply, but the sweetness chokes you. You want to escape, but the page binds you, and then you hear it. Not from your lips, not from another scribe. From the silence itself, a whisper. You will get used to it, or you will not. The sound coils round your chest. You look to the rose, half expecting its petals to move, but they do not. You glance at the other scribes, but they are bent over their work, lost in their own battles. The whisper was meant only for you. You know it, and you know it is true. You will either grow used to this discomfort, the hunger, the fragrance, the doubt, or it will consume you. Your pen scratches louder. Your breath quickens. You write as though racing the whisper, as though trying to drown it out with words. But deep inside, another voice rises, softer, your own. What if I am not meant for this? What if the gods made a mistake? You press harder, the reed biting into parchment. The rose trembles with the movement of your hand, petals loosening, one falling soundlessly to the floor. You freeze, you stare at it, red against white marble, fragile, final. A single petal fallen, like a single mistake written, irretrievable. Your chest tightens. The discomfort swells. But you do not stop. You cannot stop. Because now you understand. Survival here is not only of the body. It is survival of the page. If your words fail, you fail. If your page is empty, you are empty. And the emperor does not keep the empty dot, so you keep writing. Letter after letter, line after line, until your hand is numb and your heart is raw. You do not know if the words breathe. You do not know if they will last. But you write them anyway, because there is no other way. The rose watches, silent, patient, eternal in its fragility. And you endure. Your first task is simple, though it feels impossible. Stay alive long enough to reach midday. The room where you sit is heavy with ink, sweat, and the faint rot of yesterday's roses. You blink at the page before you, your eyes blurred from hours of lines that crawl across the parchment like insects. Your wrist burns, your stomach coils, and beneath it all, deeper than hunger, deeper than fatigue, is the quiet terror that if you stop, if you falter, you will be forgotten. The emperor does not know your name. He never will. To him, you are no more than a reed scratching paper, one among dozens of scribes filling the halls with silence that smells faintly of rosewater and fatigue. You are not here for glory. You are here because survival has led you here, because the streets outside are hungrier, sharper, harsher. The pen is not your gift. It is your shield. You press your hand to your stomach. It growls, a sound so loud you glance round to see if anyone else heard. But the others are lost in their own struggles. One old man rubs his eyes until they redden, then dips his pen again. A boy hardly older than 12 whispers lines under his breath, as though rehearsing each word before he dares write it down. Another scribe pauses, shaking his cramped fingers, then forces himself onward. Each of you fights a battle no one will ever see, no one will ever honor. The air grows warmer. Sweat prickles at the base of your neck. You want water. You want bread. You want to step outside into the gardens where fountains whisper of coolness, where marigolds brighten in the sun. But you cannot, not yet. The page before you waits, and you know the truth. An unwritten page is a death sentence. Your pen wavers. Ink pools where it should not. You curse softly under your breath, a word too small to break the silence. You try again. Another blot. Your pulse quickens. Panic scratches your ribs from inside. You wipe the edge of the reed. Dip again. Force yourself to continue. Letter after letter, though your hand shakes. You remind yourself, no one is watching. No one cares. But still the fear whispers. What if they notice I do not belong here? The fear has teeth. It bites deeper with each mistake, with each tremor in your line. You remember the streets outside the palace walls, the beggars at the market, the laborers bent over carts, the women waiting out for a handful of water. You could be there. You should be there. Perhaps you once were. But instead, you are here, in this hole of silence, with a pen in your hand and a rose beside you. You ask yourself, which fate is harsher? Which survival is crueler? A servant enters quietly, his sandals slapping the floor. He carries a clay jug and small cups of brass. He does not speak. He fills each cup with water, places it near each scribe. When he reaches you, his eyes flicker briefly toward your page. You see the shadow of judgment there. Or maybe it is only your imagination. He sets the cup down, and for a moment his hand lingers, rough, cracked, smelling faintly of smoke and cumin. Then he moves on. You stare at the water. You want to drink. Your throat burns. But you wait. You wait because you fear that even the act of lifting the cup will cost you time, will let the words slip away. You dip your pen again. You force yourself to keep writing, but your hunger grows louder. It is not only the body, it is the mind. Hunger sharpens thought into knives. Hunger makes you doubt. Hunger makes you see things that may not be there. Out of the corner of your eye, you think you see the rose move, its petals trembling though there is no breeze. You freeze. You look closer. The rose is still, perfectly still, but you cannot shake the thought. It is watching you. You pick it up. Its stem pricks you again. Another bead of blood rising where yesterday's cut has barely dried. You hiss softly, but you do not put it down. You hold it close, its fragrance overpowering. Too sweet, too heavy, yet in its weight there is comfort. You set it beside the page once more. You breathe. You write. Time bends strangely. You do not know how long you have been here, only that your body feels both lighter and heavier at once. The words crawl across the parchment in uneven lines, sometimes alive, sometimes dead. Your mind drifts. You imagine the emperor himself reading them one day, though you know he never will. You imagine him pausing, frowning, his lips curling in disapproval. You imagine your page torn, burned, discarded. And you imagine yourself discarded with it. The fear grows louder. You whisper to yourself, barely audible, maybe I am not meant for this. Maybe the gods made a mistake. Your voice startles you. The sound is too loud in the silence. You glance round quickly. No one looks up. The old man still rubs his eyes. The boy still whispers under his breath. You exhale slowly, relieved. But the words remain, echoing in your chest. The rose leans closer. Or perhaps you lean closer to it. Either way, its scent fills you, dizzying, suffocating. And in that haze, you hear it, the whisper, not from outside, from within, from the rose itself, or from the silence that binds it. You are not just a servant. You are the offering. The phrase strikes you like a hand. You repeat it in your mind, again and again, until it feels like a prayer. You are not just a servant. You are the offering. The thought both terrifies and soothes you. If it is true, then your struggle is not meaningless. If it is true, then your hunger, your fear, your blood on the rose's thorn, all of it is part of something greater. But if it is not true, if it is only the delirium of hunger and silence, then you are nothing, less than nothing. You write until your vision blurs. You drink the water finally, warm, metallic, unsatisfying. You press on. Each word is survival. Each line is a breath. You do not know if you will make it to midday. But you know this. If you stop, you will vanish. And if you vanish, the rose will close its petals and forget you ever lived. So you write. And you endure. The sun climbs higher, its light slanting through the lattice, painting the floor in patterns of fire. Sweat drips down your back. Your stomach growls again. Your wrist aches so badly you think it might break. But the page before you fills slowly, painfully, with words. Words that may never be read. Words that may not survive. Words that are all you have. And in the silence, the rose watches. There is no room for weakness in this world, because even the unseen eyes of gods, saints, ancestors, and rulers seem to follow you wherever you go. You wake with this weight. You work with it. And now, as evening draws close, you step out of the scriptorium with your legs trembling, your vision swimming, and your lips dry, only to find that the world beyond the walls is not freedom, it is ritual. The courtyard of the palace opens before you, its stones warm from a day beneath the sun, its fountains still whispering to themselves. And you are drawn to the slow movement of others who gather near the small marble shrine at the far edge of the garden. The call of the muezzin has already echoed from the minarets, bouncing across the marble domes like waves of air. And though you have heard it every day of your life, Tonight it strikes differently, as if it cuts through the layers of silence and paper dust that have covered you. You follow the sound almost without choice, as if your body is remembering something your mind forgot. The shrine is nothing grand by imperial standards. A single arched alcove of stone, veined with age, carved lightly with curling vines and verses that twist upward as though longing to touch the sky. A flame burns within, set before an ancient manuscript whose cover is so worn it looks like skin. Beside it rests a bowl of roses, their petals fading but still fragrant, still soft against the air. Round you, men and women kneel, bow, whisper words in Arabic, Persian, Sanskrit, each language rising and folding back like the weaving of cloth. Some close their eyes, some hold beads in trembling hands. Some simply stare at the flame as if waiting for it to reveal an answer. You hesitate. You have always hesitated in moments like this. Your heart wants to believe, or perhaps your heart wants to belong. But your mind is restless, skeptical and willing. You stand there as the chant grows softer, and for a moment you think no one notices you. But then an old woman lifts her head. Her eyes, clouded with age, fix on you with startling clarity. She gestures to the bowl of roses. She wants you to take one. You step forward, your hand shaking as you reach for the petals. They feel warmer than they should, as though holding the last breath of the sun within them. The woman whispers something you do not fully catch, though the rhythm of it lingers. You are not just a servant. You are the offering, the same phrase you thought you heard in the rose hours before, the same phrase that now echoes again, this time from another's lips, binding itself tighter to you. You kneel though your knees ache. You bow though your doubts gnaw. You whisper though you do not know if your words reach anyone beyond yourself. The rose in your hand trembles as if alive. You wonder if the gods are watching, or if the emperor is watching, or if the rose itself is the only witness you will ever have. Incense drifts through the air, sharp and bitter at first, then softening into sweetness that settles at the back of your throat. Smoke curls upward, disappearing into the twilight sky. You imagine your fears rising with it, your hunger dissolving into it, your self-doubt burning away in its coils. For a moment, it almost feels true. For a moment, you almost believe. But belief is not steady. It comes and it slips. It rides with fragrance and leaves with silence. You bow again, and you tell yourself, even if you do not believe, you must kneel. Even if you do not understand, you must whisper. Even if your chest feels hollow, you must act as though it is full. That is survival. That is the ritual. That is what binds you to the others here, the boy with the beads, the old woman with the clouded eyes, the gods who have knelt though their swords gleam at their sides, the maidens who carry trays of lamps and scatter petals into the water. Each of you is alone, and yet each of you is joined, stitched together by gestures, by words, by the rhythm of bowing and rising. Bowing and rising. The thought comes again, soft but insistent. You are not just a servant. You are the offering. You repeat it to yourself, not sure if you mean it, not sure if it is a truth or a lie, but it feels like a tether. And in a world that can unmake you with a single mistake, even a tether of words is worth clinging to. Night gathers. Lamps are lit, their flames small but fierce against the dark. Shadows move across the marble like waves, and for an instant, you imagine the garden is a sea, each of you adrift, each of you reaching for light. The chant fades into silence, and the worshippers begin to leave. Some linger to press their foreheads to the stone. Others slip away quickly, as if afraid the silence might reveal too much. You remain a moment longer, the rose still in your hand, its scent still heavy, its petals bruised from your grip. You rise slowly. You feel no lighter, no stronger. And yet something within you has shifted. Perhaps only slightly, perhaps only for tonight. But it is enough. You walk back through the courtyard, your steps echoing softly, your thoughts repeating like a rhythm you cannot shake. You are not just a servant. You are the offering, and somewhere, in the quiet of the night, the rose listens. No law protects you. Only power does. You learn this as the sun rises the next morning, spilling pale light through the latticework windows of the palace courtyard. You step into that light as though into another trial, carrying nothing but your reed pen, your bruised wrist, and the faint perfume of the rose that lingers on your fingers. Vow you, the palace begins to stir, its marble corridors echoing with sandals, its domes humming with pigeons, its air already heavy with smoke from the kitchens where servants hurried to prepare the emperor's morning meal. And yet, within all this movement, you see the truth. There is an order here, invisible but absolute, an order sharper than steel, older than stone, as real as the hunger that still coils in your stomach. The nobles pass first, their robes long and embroidered with thread that glitter like the surface of water at sunrise. They do not look at you, they do not look at anyone. Their eyes are always ahead, fixed on some invisible horizon, because to look down would mean to acknowledge those beneath them. And acknowledgement is a kind of power they cannot afford to give away. Behind them, guards march, their steps so precise they seem less like men and more like instruments of will, each breastplate polished, each sword whispering as it shifts against its sheath. Their gaze is cold, scanning, quick to strike upon weakness. You lower your head instinctively when one pauses, though you cannot help but wonder what it would be like to hold such authority in your hand, to be the law rather than to bend beneath it. A whisper travels through the courtyard. The governor approaches. You do not even know his true name, only the title others give him: Consahib, Lord of Order. His cart rolls forward, wheels grinding softly against the stone. The wood is painted, the canopy striped in silks of red and gold, and inside, the shadow of the governor sits upright, unmoving, his hand resting upon a scroll sealed in wax. You hear nothing from him, not a word, not even a cough, and yet the entire courtyard bends as though gravity itself has shifted. Servants hold mid-step. Scribes press their faces lower. Even the guards tighten their formation. The air thickens. You realize that this silence is not emptiness, it is law. His law. The cart pauses. He does not look at you. He does not have to. You feel his presence all the same, like a weight pressing against your chest. And you know that if he were to point a finger, if he were to speak a word, your life could end as quickly as ink dries on parchment. He will never know your name. He will never care for your words. But his shadow alone decides whether you eat today, whether you breathe tomorrow. That is the truth of power here, not the ink in your hand, not the rose beside your page, but the invisible decree carried in the silence of men who will never kneel. And yet, even as you bow your head, another thought creeps in soft, dangerous, like smoke curling through a locked room. Centuries from now, historians will wonder what his name even meant. You picture them, voices far in the future, repeating the governor's title as though it carries weight, though they will never taste the fear it brings you now. You imagine them leafing through books, tracing his lineage, debating his loyalty, as if any of that could capture this moment, this silence, this suffocation, this knowledge that today his word decides who eats and who starves. The layering of time disorients you. You are here, trembling, but also not here. You are already becoming memory. You are already slipping into the hands of those who will speak of you without knowing you. Perhaps one day they will even invent stories, polishing you into myth, smoothing the hunger from your ribs, the ink blots from your page. And you wonder, will anyone imagine you correctly? Will anyone see the truth that you are not just a scribe but a shadow? Not just a servant but the offering? A sudden cry cuts through the courtyard. A servant has stumbled, spilling a tray of copper dishes onto the stone. The clatter is sharp, metallic, unbearable. All movement freezes. The guards turn their heads in unison. The governor's cart halts. The servant falls to his knees, his hands pressed against the ground, his face pale with terror. You watch, your own breath held, because you know what comes next. The governor does not shout. He does not strike. He does not even speak. One of the guards steps forward instead, his sword glinting as he unsheathes it. Not to kill, but to press the flat edge against the servant's shoulder with crushing force. The servant cries out, but does not resist. Blood smears the metal. The guard withdraws. The governor's cart moves again. The law is restored. You swallow hard. You feel your stomach twist. And you understand more deeply than ever. Here, law is not written in books. It is not debated in halls. It is lived in fear. It is written in blood on stone. It is carried in the silence that follows punishment, the silence that tells you not to move, not to falter, not to forget your place. And yet, as the courtyard returns to its rhythm, as the nobles stride away and the guards resume their steps, you cannot let go of the thought that has anchored itself within you, centuries from now. Who will remember this servant's name? Perhaps no one, perhaps not even tomorrow, but the mark of his blood will remain on the stone long after today, long after the governor's cart has crumbled to dust, long after the empire itself has shifted and broken. Power is fleeting, fear is fleeting, but the trace of a single life, however small, can echo. You return to your chamber with this thought gnawing at you. You pick up your reed pen. You stare at the page before you, the rose still watching silently from its corner. You realize now that what you write is not yours. It is theirs, the nobles, the governors, the unseen emperor. Each word is obedience, each line submission, each phrase another break in the palace of their order. You are not asked to think, only to copy. You are not asked to live, only to endure. The law does not protect you, the law erases you, and yet still, you write. You write because survival demands it. You write because perhaps, hidden between the lines, there is still a whisper of yourself. You write because maybe one day, long after the governor's name is forgotten, someone will find this page, someone will see the trace of your hand. Someone will understand that you are here, that you are not just a servant, but the offering, and as the ink dries, the rose leans closer, as though it remembers, you have not spoken all day. The words have drained from you as ink drains from a reed, leaving behind only silence, and the dull ache of repetition. In your hands lies the same tool, the same weight, the same obligation. You press the nib to parchment again and again, watching letters form without meaning, sentences without soul, lines that vanish into one another until they blur into a haze of black scratches. The sun seems not to move. The world seems not to move. Only your hand trembles forward, driven by fear rather than faith. The silence inside your chest grows heavier. At first it was only discomfort, then unease, then fatigue. Now it presses against your ribs with such force that you cannot tell if it is hunger or sorrow, if it is the body collapsing or the spirit. You pause, lifting your hand from the page. You flex your fingers, but they do not feel like yours anymore. They are tools, wooden, stiff, borrowed. You look at them as if they belong to someone else, someone forgotten. Your throat tightens. You have not spoken all day, and now you wonder if you still remember how. You whisper a single word into the emptiness of the chamber, though you do not even know which word you choose. It emerges broken, cracked, barely a sound at all. The silence swallows it immediately. You feel foolish, suddenly small, suddenly absurd for even trying. You press your lips shut again and do not open them, the page before you waits. But your chest resists. You lean back, closing your eyes. The world spins faintly. a circle of stone and dust and rose fragrance turning round you. In that spinning, thoughts begin to rise unbidden. Maybe I am not meant for this. Maybe the gods made a mistake. The phrases come again, sharper now, biting. Maybe my hand was never meant to hold the pen. Maybe my name was never meant to be remembered. Maybe I am already erased, and I am the only one who has not noticed. The fear grows larger than the room. It swells until it fills your lungs, your stomach, your bones. You clutch the rose on the table, desperate for its softness, but even its petals feel brittle tonight, crumbling beneath your touch. The thorn bites again. You welcome the sting, because at least it proves you are still alive. The bead of blood blossoms quickly, red against the pale skin of your finger, and you stare at it with something close to relief. Pain is real. Pain means you are still here, but the relief fades quickly. You wonder if even pain will desert you. You wonder if one day you will prick yourself and feel nothing. Not blood, not hurt, not even the faint tremor of recognition. You fear that day more than death itself. Your breath shortens. Your chest tightens. You press your palm against your heart, as if to remind it of its duty, as if to command it to continue. Round you, the chamber is unchanged stone walls. Wooden desk, the faint trickle of water outside, but within you is storm brews louder and louder. You want to cry out, to let the storm escape, but no sound comes. Your lips part, but your throat is dry, your tongue heavy, your voice gone. You feel yourself split. One part of you remains seated, pen in hand, body aching, eyes heavy. Another part drifts upward, watching, detached, almost pitying. You see yourself as if from above, his scribe bent over a desk, anonymous, faceless, fragile. You want to reach down and shake that figure, to tell him to rise, to tell him to breathe, to tell him he is not lost. But you cannot. You are trapped in both places at once, the watcher and the watched, and the distance between them grows unbearable. The rose seems to lean toward you, closer than ever. Its petals dark in the lamplight. Its scent is no longer sweet, but cloying, suffocating, a heaviness that fills the room until you can hardly breathe. You whisper again, this time to it, though your voice cracks, why am I here? No answer comes, only silence, only the weight of your own question echoing back into your chest. You close your eyes, hoping for darkness, but even there you find no peace. Faces emerge, faces of others who right beside you, faces of servants punished, faces of nobles who never once glanced your way. They pass by like ghosts, each one carrying a piece of your fear. Their mouths move, but you hear no words. Their eyes meet yours, but you feel no comfort. You want to push them away, but they remain, pressing closer, whispering nothingness into your ears until you cannot tell whether the voices are theirs or your own. You gasp full breath. You grip the edge of the table until your knuckles ache. You want to stand, but your legs feel weak, as if the stone floor itself has trapped you. You want to scream, but your throat holds you prisoner. You want to weep, but even the tears will not come. You are a vessel filling with silence, and there is no room left for anything else. And then, in that suffocating stillness, a memory rises. Not of the palace, not of the desk, not even of the rose. A memory of a simpler place, a market perhaps, or a field, where laughter once touched your ears and warmth once touched your skin. It is faint, almost faded, but it pierces the storm for a heartbeat. You cling to it. You breathe into it. For a moment, the silence weakens, but then the doubt returns, crueler than before. What if even this memory is not mine? What if it belongs to someone else, someone who lived a better life, someone who deserved it more? What if I'm nothing but a shadow pretending to be whole? The thought shatters you. You bow your head to the desk, pressing your forehead against the rough wood. You feel the grain scrape your skin. You press harder, desperate for something solid, something real, something that will remind you of your place in this world. But the desk does not care. The room does not care. The rose does not care. You whisper again, your voice breaking, your words fractured. Maybe the gods made a mistake. Maybe they should have left me unwritten. And still, no answer comes. The night deepens. The storm within you does not pass. You remain at the desk, broken open, silent, waiting for a voice that never arrives, a comfort that never touches you. The rose leans closer, but even it seems powerless tonight. Its petals droop, its fragrance fades. Its thorn has already taken what little blood you had to give. You are left with nothing but yourself and tonight. That feels like less than nothing. The silence does not last forever. It sharpens into something else, something jagged, something that presses you toward a choice you cannot avoid. You sit at the desk with your body folded and your heart heavy, and for a moment you almost believe the night will dissolve you entirely. But then the door creaks open. It is not a servant, not a courtier, not a poet come to share words. It is a guard, tall and still, his armor catching the lamplight, his eyes fixed on you with no softness at all. He does not bow, he does not greet, he only delivers the message. The emperor will see your work by dawn. The words fall like stone into water, rippling outward through your chest. By dawn, the ink is not ready. The page is not ready. You are not ready. But the guard does not care. He turns and leaves before you can speak, before you can beg for time, before you can explain that roses do not bloom on command. The door closes and you are alone again. Alone but not the same. For now, the weight of expectation has turned into a blade, and it rests against your throat. You look at the page, blank still, or worse than blank, marred with scratches, false starts, abandoned words. You dip the pen again, but your hand trembles too violently. Ink blots the parchment, bleeding outward like a spreading wound. You curse softly under your breath, though the sound barely escapes your lips. You try again, another blot, another wound. Your chest tightens. You cannot deliver this. You cannot hand over failure to the emperor, to the court, to history itself. And yet what choice do you have? The trial has arrived, whether you welcome it or not. The rose leans near, drooping now, its petals heavy with the passing hours. You stare at it, searching for strength, but tonight it offers none. Its fragrance is weak, its color dim in the flickering lamp. It seems to mirror you, exhausted, fragile, fading. You wonder whether its presence is a blessing or a curse. Perhaps you depended too much on it. Perhaps you handed it your strength long ago, and now it withers, leaving you hollow. Your mind races. There must be another way, another solution, another path through this labyrinth of silence and demand. You think of fleeing, slipping away into the dark corridors, abandoning the palace, the desk, the pen. You imagine yourself vanishing into the alleys of the city, nameless, faceless, free. The thought tempts you, flickers in your mind like fire. But you know the truth. You cannot run. The guards would find you. The emperor would send them. And even if you escaped, where would you go? The city does not know you. The world does not need you. And within yourself, you would never escape. The page would haunt you, wherever you fled. Empty and waiting. So you remain seated, trembling. Trapped. The conflict grows sharper within you. To write or not to write. To submit failure or to risk creation. Each option feels like death. If you write poorly, you are ruined. If you write nothing, you are ruined. There is no gentle path, no safe choice, only risk, only demand. only the weight of dawn approaching too quickly. You close your eyes, pressing your palms against them until colors burst in the darkness. You whisper again, not to the rose this time, not to the desk, but to the unseen gods who watch from their thrones of silence. If you wish me to write, then guide my hand. If you wish me to perish, then let me fall now. The gods, as always, do not answer. The night deepens. You open your eyes. The ink waits. The page waits. The rose waits. Your hand trembles. But beneath the trembling is something else, something quieter, sharper, almost like defiance. You realize that the trial is not only against the emperor, not only against history. It is against yourself, against the silence you have carried for too long. And so, slowly, painfully, you lower the pen. You breathe once, twice. You press the nib to the page. The first line emerges, crooked, unsteady, but alive. It is not perfect. It is not grand, but it exists, and in this trial, existence itself is the only victory that matters. You continue, forcing the words out one by one, bleeding them onto the page like wounds, like offerings. Each letter costs you something, but you pay it. Each phrase burns you, but you accept it. The rose leans close, watching silently, its fading fragrance mingling with the smell of ink. The night does not soften, but it shifts. You are still trembling, still breaking, but now you are moving forward, line by fragile line, sentence by sentence. The trial is not over. The dawn has not yet come, but for the first time, you are not paralyzed. You are fighting, even if you lose. You are writing, even if it destroys you. And perhaps that is the only truth this page ever wanted. The pen scratches onward, fragile yet persistent, and with every line you feel the weight of your survival pressing closer. Because this world, this palace, this empire, this endless court of expectation does not move on beauty alone. Behind the ink and roses lies another truth, one made of copper coins, sweating laborers, salt carried across deserts, and silversmiths bending over their fire until dawn. Every word you write sits on the backs of thousands you will never see. The page beneath your hand seems empty, but in reality, it is crowded with lives. The parchment itself was not born easily. It is the skin of a lamb, prepared with days of scraping, washing, stretching. The work of nameless hands who earned less in a year than the cost of your lamp's oil tonight. The ink you dip into so casually, black and glistening, comes from soot gathered from endless fires, ground with gum and water by children whose fingertips are stained forever. Even the rose beside you was not free. It was plucked by a gardener at dawn, carried by a servant across courtyards, set beside you as though it were effortless. Yet in truth, each petal carries the labor of men who tilled the soil, women who drew the water, generations who knew how to coax life from earth. You pause, looking at the rose differently now. Its softness hides the hardness beneath. Its fragrance masks the sweat of the unseen. You realize then that every luxury surrounding you, silk curtains, polished wood, gold-trimmed lamps, rests on invisible foundations. And if you fail tonight, if your page collapses, you will not fall alone. The chain will tug backward, pulling many with you. Your stomach clenches at the thought of food, though you have not eaten since yesterday. You remember the meals you have seen carried to the emperor, silver platters piled high with rice, lamb stews perfumed with saffron, mangoes chilled in snow brought down from the mountains. And yet outside these walls, men sleep hungry, children gnaw stale bread, widows boil water only to drink the illusion of fullness. This contrast does not escape you. Every bite inside the cord costs days of work outside it. The page feels heavier. You touch it, and it seems almost alive, as if whispering the true economy of its existence. A single nail in the carpenter's chest costs a day's labor. a blade for the scribe's knife costs 2. The inkstone at your side could have bought bread for 10 families. The lamp that burns above you could have been sold to clothe a farmer's child. And yet here they are, gathered not for survival but for beauty, for the fragile pursuit of words. Your hand trembles as you dip the pen again. You wonder if this is selfishness, this quiet task of writing. Well, the world outside hammers, plows, weaves, and bleeds. But then another thought rises, unexpected. Perhaps survival does not only mean food or clothing. Perhaps survival also demands memory, demands beauty, demands words that will outlast hunger's brief cries. Perhaps your page, if it endures, might one day soften the suffering of someone you will never meet. Perhaps the unseen economy of survival has many currencies, and tonight you are spending ink where others spend sweat. The pen scratches on, the rose tilts in silence. Its petals, though fading, remind you of markets you have walked through, stalls overflowing with turmeric, indigo, sandalwood, spices in clay jars, fabrics dyed in riverside workshops. You remember the cries of merchants, the sound of copper coins clinking from pond to palm, the bargaining that stretched from sunrise to dusk. The empire breathes through trade, salt from Gujarat, silk from Bengal, rubies from Kashmir, musk from the mountains, horses from Persia, glass from Venice carried over deserts on camelback. And here you sit, as single scribe, your quiet work dependent on this vast, invisible circulation. Without it, there would be no parchment, no ink, no lamp, no rose. Your survival is not your own. It is a web, stretched across lands you may never see, sustained by thousands who will never know your name. You write a line, and in that line is the shadow of a farmer sowing rice in the monsoon, a potter turning clay in Lahore, a shepherd watching his flock in the Deccan. The empire is written into your ink, whether you admit it or not. The thought steadies you. It does not erase the fear of dawn, but it reframes it. If you fail not only yourself, but the economy that cradles you. If you succeed not only for the emperor, but for every hidden hand that has shaped the tools in front of you. You owe them a page that breathes dots, so you keep writing. The words stumble, then rise, then stumble again. They are not yet strong, but they exist. You pause only to rub your eyes, to drink a sip of water that tastes faintly of iron, to stretch your aching fingers. Each pause is costly, for dawn presses closer, but each pause also reminds you, your body itself is part of this economy. Without its entrance, nothing will survive. The rose watches still. Its petals begin to fall, one by one, onto the desk. You do not brush them away. They gather on the parchment's edge, soft red against pale skin. You see them as payment, as coins of another kind, as offerings made silently in exchange for the lines you wrestle into being. You think, perhaps no page can be written without sacrifice. Perhaps survival is always a trade, always a balance between what is gained and what is given up. Outside, faintly, you hear a sound, the rattle of wheels, the call of a watchman, the bark of a stray dog. The city stirs, even in the late hours. Bakers are already rising to knead dough. Guards on the ramparts shift their weight. Women in the outskirts rise to grind grain before dawn. The empire never sleeps entirely. It breathes in cycles, one labor feeding another, each survival bound to the next. And here, in the stillness of your chamber, you realize you are part of that same breathing, not above it, not separate from it, entangled, dependent. The pen scratches. The ink thins, the rose leans, and you, trembling, exhausted, still press onward. Because the trial of survival is not simply hunger or coin or law. It is the endless question, will you give up, or will you endure another hour? You choose entrance, again and again. You choose it, though it costs you everything. And with each line, the page begins slowly, faintly, stubbornly to live. You have always been told stories. Stories of palaces that gleam like mirrors, of emperors who speak only in poetry, of women whose laughter carries like silver bells, of cities paved with marble where every street smells of saffron and roses. You believed these stories once, or at least you wanted to believe them. And now, seated at this lonely desk, your pen bleeding ink onto fragile parchment, you realize how carefully those myths were constructed, and how poorly they survive when pressed by the weight of silence. The room you sit in is not perfect. The walls are cracked where dampness has crept through. The lamp sputters, its oil uneven. The rose beside you leans withered, its petals curling inward as if ashamed of their decay. Nothing here gleams like the tales promised. And neither do you. Your hands are ink-stained, your hair tangled, your body bent with exhaustion. Yet this is the reality of creation. Not golden, not polished, only raw, aching persistence. You think of the court itself, that grand space sung of in countless poems. They say it is filled only with music, with carpets as soft as clouds, with fountains that never run dry. But you have walked through it in the heat of the day, when the marble burns your feet, when flies swarm over fruit left too long in the sun, when whispers of betrayal echo louder than the musicians' lutes. You have seen courtiers smile as if carved from ivory, but behind their smiles you have felt the bite of hunger, jealousy, suspicion. The myth says they are flawless, but the truth is that they are human, trembling in their silks just as you tremble here in your ink-stained robe. And what of the emperor himself? The myth says he is more than a man, he is justice, wisdom, and mercy made flesh. But you have seen his face close enough to notice the veins at his temples, the faint tremor in his hands when he lifts a goblet, the weariness in his eyes when no one is watching. He is no god, he is mortal, caged by his own power, strangled by the endless need to appear more than his. You know that his grandeur costs him more than your trembling ever will. The myths whisper that the empire is eternal, invincible, a garden stretching forever. But reality leaks through like rain in the roof. You have heard rumors of famine in Bengal, of rebellions in the Deccan, of villages abandoned after flood or plague. You have seen the roads where beggars outnumber travelers, where mothers hush hungry children with dry palms, where soldiers march not for glory but for a coin. These things are not sung in poems. They do not appear in the court paintings where everyone's face glows with serene perfection. Yet they are the marrow of the empire, the shadow that sustains the light. You pause, your pen hovering above the page. You wonder why myths are told at all. Perhaps they are shields fragile, glittering shields against the crushing weight of reality. Perhaps they are meant not to deceive, but to soften, to allow sleep to come, to let generations dream of marble cities even while they live among dust. And yet, when you breathe deeply, when the ink blots under your hand, you cannot help but feel that the myth suffocates. It demands that you pretend perfection, when all you know is imperfection. The rose is the perfect symbol. In poems, it is always fresh, blooming, flawless, its fragrance eternal. But here, on your desk, its petals fall, one by one, scattering like small sighs across the parchment. You see it clearly now. The truth is not the everlasting bloom, but the quiet surrender of petals to time. And perhaps this is what the myth hides, the inevitability of decay, the truth that even the most beautiful thing must fall. Your breath slows. You think of the stories told in faraway lands, where travelers describe the Mughal Empire as a paradise of jewels, elephants draped in gold, and palaces floating on water. Perhaps they believe it. Perhaps they want to believe it. But if they sat where you sit tonight, if they felt the cold creep of dawn against their bones, If they watched a rose collapse into silence, they would know. Paradise is never whole. Splendor is never free. And yet there is another truth, softer, almost tender. The myth is false, but it is not useless. For in believing it, people find courage to endure their small realities. In telling it, generations stitch themselves to something greater than their hunger, their fear, their fading days. Even if the marble is cracked, even if the emperor trembles, even if the rose withers, the myth allows one to believe for a breath that life can be otherwise. You look at the page. Have covered in lines now. It is neither myth nor pure reality. It is something between a trembling attempt to catch the truth while leaving space for beauty. Perhaps that is your true task. Not to destroy the myth entirely, but to carve a window in it, to let air in, to let silence in, to let someone centuries from now feel the ache beneath the splendor dot the pen scratches. Another line forms. Your body aches, your eyes blur, your heart stumbles forward. The myths unravel quietly round you, falling away like petals. What remains is raw, imperfect, but alive. And perhaps that is the only reality worth leaving behind. The rose leans closer, dropping one last petal onto your hand. You do not brush it away. You let it stay there, fragile and real. A reminder that beauty always dies. But truth, however quiet, however incomplete, endures, and you write on, whispering silently to yourself. You are never just the myth. You are the witness. You are the silence beneath the music. You are the hand that recorded what could not be spoken. The hour bends toward its breaking point. You feel it not only in the thinning oil of the lamp, not only in the tremor of your hand, but in the air itself, charged, tense, as though something unseen waits just beyond the edge of silence. You have written enough lines to cover half the page, though each word has cost you more than you thought possible. Yet the page feels incomplete, suspended, like a bridge that leads nowhere. And you know, with a weight pressing down on your chest, that this night cannot end the way it began. Something must shift, something must break, something must echo forward into time. You pause. The pen rests against your fingertips, wet with ink. Your eyes ache from staring. Your body aches from stillness. But deeper than these physical pains is another ache, the ache of legacy. You wonder, what if these words outlive you? What if someone, someday, reads them when your bones are dust? Will they sense your trembling? Will they see the blotches, the uneven script, the rose petals pressed faintly into the parchment sedge? Or will they imagine, as myths always suggest, that you wrote with calm certainty, with divine grace, with a hand guided by heaven? A bitter smile touches your lips. The truth will never travel whole. It will always be reshaped, polished, sweetened. Perhaps your sweat will be forgotten, your despair erased. But perhaps if you're careful, something of your night will remain, hidden between lines, like breath between words. That possibility steadies you. You lift the pen again. The rose gives a faint sigh. Or perhaps it is only your imagination. A petal falls soundlessly onto the desk. You watch it, thinking how every fall is an ending, but also a seed from memory. You wonder if, centuries from now, some other hand will touch this very page, see the faint brown stain where a petal once lay, and pause. Perhaps they will think, someone placed a rose here. Someone could not write without its nearness. And in that pause, perhaps they will sense you not the myth, not the polished history, but you. The thought burns through you. You write faster, more urgently, as if racing not against dawn, but against oblivion. Each line becomes a plea. Remember me. Remember this night. Remember the silence that nearly swallowed me whole. Remember that behind every page there is a trembling hand, a faltering breath, a body afraid of failing. The pen scratches. Ink gathers at the corners of the letters. Your hand cramps. but you force it forward. Something inside you breaks open, not despair this time, not fear, but a strange clarity. You realize that you are not writing only for the emperor, not only for the court, not only for survival. You are writing for someone you will never meet, someone who will breathe centuries after you are gone, someone who may never know your name, but who may feel your night like a shadow across their sleep. This realization is the turning. You feel it as surely as if the earth had shifted under your feet. All night you have bent under the weight of expectation, of trial, of economy, of myth. But now the weight feels different. It is no longer crushing you. It is flowing through you, into the page. You are not its prisoner, you are its vessel. You close your eyes for a moment, letting this clarity settle. You hear the faint hum of the lamp, the distant call of a watchman in the courtyard, the slow collapse of the rose. And beneath it all, you hear something else, the faint whisper of your own voice, though your lips do not move. It says, "This day will echo through time." The legacy line. It returns to you now, unbidden, a prophecy you planted in the first breath of this night. You understand it differently now, not as threat, not as burden, but as gift. The page will echo, not perfectly, not loudly, but enough. Enough to carry some fragment of your breath into futures you cannot imagine. Enough to survive you. You opened your eyes again. The page waits. You write with new steadiness, though exhaustion still drags at your bones. The words come faster now, less forced, as if the ink itself has loosened. You do not chase perfection anymore. You chase truth, and in chasing truth, you find beauty where you did not expect it, in the crooked lines, in the blotched letters, in the way the rose petals scatter across the desk. You think of the emperor again not as the godlike figure of myth, but as a man who too must wrestle with silence, who too will one day lie awake wondering if his legacy will endure. You think of the farmers, the potters, the merchants, the beggars, all of them carrying pieces of survival into a future they will never see. And you realize legacy is not marble, not thrones, not battles. It is moments like this, fragile, private, unseen, that somehow leave the deepest mark. The rose bends lower, nearly touching the ink. Its fragrance is faint now, almost gone, but its nearness steadies you. You whisper to it softly, "You will not be forgotten either." And perhaps that is true. Perhaps one day, someone will read of the rose that could not be separated from the page. They will understand that beauty is never decoration alone. It is companion. It is witness. The dawn begins to stir outside, pale light brushing the edges of the window. You see it with the corner of your eye, but you do not stop. Your hand moves faster, desperate to capture what remains before the night dissolves. This is your turning point. This is the moment the silence breaks, not with thunder, not with applause, but with the soft insistence of words refusing to die. You write, and in writing you breathe. You breathe, and in breathing you endure. You endure, and in enduring you become something more than a servant, more than a trembling scribe. You become the echo itself. The page fills. The rose falls. The night ends, and you know, with a quiet certainty, that you will not vanish entirely. A fragment will remain. A whisper will survive. And that is enough. The page lies before you now, filled more than you thought possible. Lines march uneven but steady across its pale surface, each one carrying fragments of your struggle, your breath, your silence. The lamp burns low, its flame a weary companion, flickering as though it has fought this long night beside you. And you are hollowed, emptied, but not broken. You lean back, closing your eyes. For a moment, the weight of your body nearly drags you down into sleep. But the task is not fully over. The dawn has not yet spread its full light. There is still the ritual of ending, the ritual of surrender, the ritual of sleep. Without it, the night will remain open, unfinished, echoing restlessly. The rose bends almost to the page now, petals drooping like eyelids. You lift it gently, holding the stem between your fingers. Its fragrance is faint, a ghost of what it was, but you breathe it in anyway. You whisper to it, almost a prayer. You stayed with me. You gave me what you could. Rest now. You lay it carefully beside the parchment, where its last petal may fall into words already written. Your hand trembles as you reach for the lamp, shielding the flame from a draught. The oil is nearly gone, the wick almost spent. You watch its flicker dance against the walls, casting shapes that remind you of shadows you have carried all night: fear, doubt, silence. Soon, they too will vanish. Soon, light will come from another source. You sit quietly, listening to the room. There is no sound of ink now, no scratching of pen, only the small sigh of your own breath. You realize you have been holding it shallow, uneven, as though afraid the world would hear you. Now, at last, you let it deepen. You inhale fully, slowly, until your lungs ache, and release it in a long exhale that feels like surrender. The breath becomes a ritual. Inhale, exhale, a reminder you are still here. You have survived the night. The city outside begins to stir. You hear faint bells, perhaps from a temple across the river. You hear the call of crows gathering in the palace gardens. You hear footsteps of servants beginning their endless task, strewing water, sweeping courtyards, tending animals. The Empire does not sleep long. Its pulse resumes as soon as the sky lightens. But within this room, time feels slower, stretched, as if allowing you one last pause before the world demands you rise again. You bow your head toward the page, as though in prayer, not to worship it, not to praise it, but to acknowledge it. You murmur softly, "You exist now. You are no longer nothing. Carry what I cannot." It feels right to leave the weight with the words. They will outlast you. They will face the dawn on your behalf. Your body aches for rest. You roll your shoulders, rub your eyes, stretch your cramped fingers. The simple gestures feel ceremonial, like cleansing before prayer. Each motion tells your body it may let go. It may loosen its grip. It may surrender to the softness that comes after struggle. You extinguish the lamp with a careful breath. The room plunges into darkness, save for the faintest blue light leaking through the lattice of the window. The sudden absence of flame feels like absolution. The night's labor has ended. Nothing more can be demanded of you. You rise unsteadily, the floor cool beneath your feet. You walk to the low bed in the corner, its sheets plain but waiting, its pillows faintly scented with last night's marigolds. You lie down slowly, almost ceremoniously, as if sinking into water. The sheets embrace you, cool and forgiving. For the first time in hours, you allow your body to soften. The rose rests on the desk, its petals sagging in silence. The page lies beside it, heavy with ink, glowing faintly in the early light. You leave them behind, not forgotten, but entrusted. They will keep vigil while you surrender. Your eyes close. Darkness spreads, softer than ink, warmer than marble, gentler than myth. Your breath steadies. Inhale, exhale. A rhythm older than empires. A rhythm that promises you will wake again, even if the world has changed by morning dot and just before sleep overtakes you. A final whisper curls through your thoughts, as if the night itself is tucking you in. You were never just a servant. You were the story. You were the echo. And now, you may rest. The dawn unfolds without you. The empire continues. But within the cocoon of your sleep, the silence is no longer empty. It is full. Full of pages, full of whispers, full of a rose that leaned too close. You drift. You surrender. You sleep. The silence has folded round you like a blanket. Yet something lingers, still not weight, not burden, but a quiet resonance, like the final hum of a string long after the musician has lifted their hand. The night is behind you, the rose is behind you, the ink, the trembling, the struggle all behind you, and yet they remain, not as obstacles but as echoes. They move through the air gently, waiting, not pressing, simply reminding you that what has been written does not end when the pen stops. It continues in those who listen, in those who breathe the story into their own sleep. The page rests where you left it, and perhaps already the ink has dried. Perhaps a servant will find it when the day properly begins, lifting it carefully, curious at its uneven lines, wondering if it will please the one who asked for it. Perhaps no one will notice at all. Perhaps it will be lost among other papers, other records, other fragile traces of empire. But none of that matters now. What matters is that it exists. What matters is that you endured. And because you endured, words will endure. You are not awake to see this, yet the listener you are awake enough to feel it. You are the one who carries what the scribe no longer can. As your breathing slows, as your body softens, the story moves from parchment into you. You are the new page. You are the rose leaning close. You are the silence that refused to stay empty. And so the myth turns again. Not of emperors or marble, not of wars or jewels, but of simple survival, of the quiet act of writing through a night that did not want to be written. You may ask, is that enough for a myth? And the answer, whispered softly in the folds of your own rest, is yes. Myths are not built only from greatness. They are built from persistence, from the refusal to vanish, from the choice to keep the flame alive when the oil is almost gone. You, listening now, are part of this persistence. You are breathing the same breath the scribe once breathed. You are closing your eyes under the same dawn he once faced. You are carrying him forward simply by remembering him, by letting the sound of his night brush against your own sleep. In doing so, you join a chain older than empire, the chain of those who keep each other alive in memory. The rose falls, petal by petal, but each fall is not an ending. Each fall is a continuation. One petal becomes a blot on the page. Another becomes a stain on the table. Another disappears into dust. Yet all of them carry the fragrance of the rose that once was whole, just as the fragments of the story carry the fragrance of the life that once trembled. Even now, in your mind, the rose is alive. Even now, though the scribe has long since surrendered, his night stretches forward into you. The ritual is complete, but endings are gentle here. Nothing closes sharply. Nothing breaks. It all dissolves slowly, folding back into breath, into stillness, into sleep. You are free now, not bound to the struggle of writing, not bound to the silence that resisted you. You are simply floating, buoyed by a night that asked everything and gave something in return. Listen. The hum is fading. The echoes are softening. The rose has done its work. The page has done its work. You have done your work, too, though all you did was listen. That listening is enough. That listening ensures the story does not vanish. That listening makes you a keeper of myths, even as you drift toward your own sleep. So rest now. Let the page close without fear. Let the rose fall without sorrow. Let the silence stretch without worry. Everything that needed to be carried has been carried. Everything that needed to survive has already survived. You may rest as the scribe once rested. You may let go as the rose once let go. And if, someday, you wake and remember even a fragment, a word, an image, a faint shadow of a rose against a page, know that this night has not ended. It continues through you. It continues wherever you carry it. That is the promise of myth. That is the gift of echo. That is the legacy that does not ask for monuments, only for a moment of remembrance. Close your eyes. Breathe softly. The story is finished, but your rest is just beginning. Good night.